So we're here at Superbooth 2017 with Oz from Expert Sleepers with a new prototype, new versions of things and some new firmware. How's it going?
It's going good, and it's nearly finished, which is great because we get to go home soon. But apart from that, yeah,
tired last day.
It is the last day, but you know, we're full of energy still. It's great.
So you have a range of integrated items as usual for Expert Sleepers.
Yep.
What have we got going on with the new firmware for the FH-1?
Yeah, so the FH-1, just to remind you, is my USB MIDI host module for plugging in a USB device directly with no need for a computer. I've got it connected to this Novation launch key thing just as a keyboard controller at the moment, or I did when I had it turned up. So new in the firmware for this, I've put an arpeggiator to make that go a bit faster. Match that. So lots of different arpeggiation functions. There's a freebie for those who've already got the module. Makes it fun to play with the keyboard now.
And there's no escaping the new Distings?
The new Distings, yes. So they were announced at NAMM. They started shipping about 3 weeks ago. Sold out already, happy to say. So the new Disting is the same as the old Disting, but with a screen now, which makes it a whole lot easier to use. Micro SD card slot on the front. And the news on the Disting, which I didn't mention at NAMM because I didn't have any software ready to show it with, is the Disting Mark IV has a pair of MIDI ports on the back on a breakout. So this little panel here is just a passive breakout to put some MIDI cables on. That kind of looks like this. It really is just a cable to jacks. I'm going to make this available as a kit as well through our good friends at Thonk, so people can just, you can completely DIY it. It's trivial. It's just a pair of connections to a MIDI cable. And this lets the Disting Mark IV receive MIDI, either for parameter changes or MIDI to CV stuff, and it also lets it send MIDI. So you can use it for CV to MIDI. I've got it connected up here to this Korg Volca, if I just turn it up. So I've got some Distings here making us that sequence, which is going into this one, which is in CV to MIDI mode, pumping out MIDI through this cable into the Volca. So that's a dedicated CV to MIDI. I've also added in the existing functions like the quantizer, which has been in the Disting forever, as well as quantizing the CV now. It will spit out the MIDI note on the MIDI cable at the same time, okay, which is kind of fun. And the MIDI file playback, which I've had on the Disting for a while from the SD card, as well as doing a MIDI to CV on the MIDI file, also now sends the MIDI file out over the MIDI cable too. Right, okay. So you could hook that up to an external synth and stream a MIDI file from the Disting to the synth. Or CV through MIDI. Or yeah. So yeah,
we've also got a new prototype as well.
Indeed. So you can see this is totally a rough prototype. It's full of blank panels. Again, obviously based on the guts of a Disting to make a prototype, though it's ultimately not going to be that. What this is the general CV, I'm calling it. It's a full general MIDI sound chip, but with CV control. So all the pianos and saxophones and orchestra hits and shakuhachis that you love, all under CV control. So just turn it up so you can hear it. So completely simple scenario, just triggering the sound. I've got the same sequence there, just puts through different sounds. But my concept for this is to make it more than just triggering the sounds. I want it to feel like a VCO or some kind of creative sound source. So general MIDI sound chip as VCO basically. So you can just twat about with the pitch, and there you go. I'll plug that back into the sequence again. So there's your sequence. Now it's slew.
Bending all of those general MIDI sounds as if it was a VCO.
Exactly. And because there's such a tight connection from the my CV controls to the general MIDI chip, I can throw a huge amount of pitch bend and CCs at it to really kind of abuse its synthesis capability. A good example of that being if I switch to the drum mode. So we've got all our nice general MIDI drums. Can't hear for some reason. I'll trigger them. So you can make some nice general MIDI rhythms, but I can trigger that at audio rate. And then you basically end up with a kind of a wavetable made of general MIDI drums.
It almost sounds like audio rate sample scanning or something.
Yeah, or like, so there, there's our sequence, but it's now played on general MIDI drums as VCO.
Really tearing on the drum sound, it's killer.
So yeah, so the kind of concept is, obviously I've just got a few sockets, there's lots of holes here, I want more knobs, more CV control, for real kind of abuse of this kind of cheesy 80s technology, put it under CV control, really mangle it, and have an unusual sound source which sounds like nothing quite else.
Yeah, it sounded great, especially on the drums. So yeah, thank you very much.
No worries, thanks for taking your time.